Myself, I spend a lot of time offshore. I spend a lot of time in deeper water when it comes to grass. I want to find hydrilla that's just topping out, hydrilla beside current, hydrilla that's not getting a ton of pressure. At the Potomac, on day one, when we had good conditions and I was able to get out, I'm sitting probably in this picture, I'm sitting about 300 yards from anything. I'm way out in the middle of the lake, and if you look closely, you'll actually see clumps of grass around, and I caught my 2 biggest fish in the Potomac out in the middle on a frog, middle of the day. I was sitting at about 4 feet of water, and that's actually one of my favorite things to do. And some of the people that'll fish with me that are even froggers, it drives them crazy because they don't have anything to throw at. Because in some places, you actually won't even have grass that you can see. It'll be a foot under the water. That's a huge player at Guntersville, Chickamauga, the places that have grass early in the summer that's not topped out yet. And other grass things I always pay attention to, like in a lot of southern fisheries, water willow, it holds fish all summer. Just pay attention to what's going on in the grass. Because if you pull up and there's no brim around, there's no sucking, popping, no sounds, if it's not active water, move on. Keep moving until you find it. It's going to be there somewhere. Reed clumps are a huge deal in current. I could not tell you how many 5-pounders just running isolated reed clumps with current, you'll catch some of the biggest bass of the summer. They may not be there the whole day, but figure out your feeding window on a fishery, and once you're on it, run it and don't stop. Pull up to a reed clump, make 4 casts, pick up the trolling motor, go to the next one. Another thing, lily and lotus pads. I challenge everyone to learn the difference between the pads and how fish relate to them. Most of the pads you'll see in Florida are actually lily pads, spatterdocks, bonnets. Those pads don't provide as much shade and cover for a larger population of fish. Fish will move in and out of them, but pads like lotus pads, which is what you'll find, a lot of people call them flat pads. They're the larger pads at Seminole, Eufaula, a lot of Texas lakes, Louisiana. They'll have fish that live in them year round, and especially summertime. Once they've pulled up into them, once it's gotten hot, the water underneath the flat pads will be at 2, 3, and even 4 degrees colder than the water that's 10 yards off from those pads. And when it comes to frogging them, a lot of people, it is very frustrating because you can lose so many fish. Be patient. Work frogs extremely slow in some scenarios, but also the right equipment will get those fish out. So let's talk about creeks. This is also was a factor at the All-American in Lake Barkley. Most of the brim beds that I was fishing were way in the backs of creeks. When it comes to the reasons I do that, you always can have, regardless of windy conditions, you'll have calm conditions that you can actually visually see what's going on without a ton of waves, without a ton of boat pressure. You can get away from people and control as many of the uncontrollable factors as you can by limiting the amount of waves and other disturbances that can happen, because a huge deal of frog fishing is fish being able to visually see your bait. So by getting away from the main lake areas, you can really get on some really good frog bites when a lot of people think there's not even a frog bite going on. But you can go a mile or 2 up a creek, find some resident fish, and catch them. I mean, look at John Cox did it at Wheeler and won the Forest Wood Cup doing it. Another big thing, skipping docks with the frog. This is a love-hate. There are some days it's the best thing you've got going. Some days you can do this and never get a bite. So when I find active brim nosed up under docks, I'll start skipping them. And if I do it for an hour and don't get a bite, I'll put it down and I'm going to go do something else. But you will find days in the heat of the summer, usually on the dog days when it's really hot, calm, slick, when you find brim nosed up all up under docks and you start skipping them with a frog and you start generating some gigantic bites. I actually won a tournament on some of the dock lakes around the house throwing bream-colored frogs. I was actually throwing a Spro killer gill under docks and won a tournament that kind of sparked a lot of people starting to do that back home, but it can catch some of the biggest fish in a lake. Beluga beds, we've talked quite a bit about. The bluegill will bed on the new moon and full moon from May all the way through. I've even caught them as late as late October spawning on bluegill beds. So watch your moon phases, because that can be a huge player all summer long on just finding some tournament winning fish. Now, this is something I don't want to talk about to a lot of people, and I hate that I'm having to mention this here, is Mayfly hatches. This is one of the best things you can ever figure out how to do on a fishery. When it comes to Mayfly hatches and learning how to fish them, hands down, bar none, when a hatch happens, any tournament can be won off of it. It's just a matter of understanding how to read it. When it comes to Mayfly hatches, to make it simple, if you find active bugs with birds and brim and bass, you'll win a tournament.
Bass you, folks. Information is pouring over. If you want to learn more about every lake, how to fish, shallow, deep, in between, skipping docks and rocks and cranking, slow wiggling, chatter, smattering, you get it at Bass U. Get on Bass U TV, check it out, sign up, be a member, be part of it, folks. Keep learning.